Hi everyone, welcome to our talk today. We have here Timothy Zahn.
Hello.
He's the author of his latest novel, Thrawn. You've also written a bunch of other Star Wars novels, including Heir to the Empire. And you said over 50 short stories and novellas at this point?
Over 50 novels, 11 of them. Thrawn is the 11th Star Wars novel, over 50 total, and something over 100 short stories, novelettes.
Wow. Cool.
But I've been at it since 1980, so I've had time to do this.
So we have a bunch of questions from Googlers for you today.
Okay.
The first question we have is, having written for both the old EU and the new Disney canon, were there any noticeable differences in how much creative control you had over the official Star Wars continuity?
Not a lot of difference. When I started with the Thrawn trilogy, no one had been allowed to write post-Return of the Jedi before, so I had a very clear canvas, and I could basically suggest what I wanted to do to Lucasfilm, and at that time Bantam, and they would tell me, yes, this is fine, or this may be encroaching on something. But I didn't have to worry about running to anybody else. I think Dark Horse Comics was doing a series at the same time, but it was pretty clear canvas. As time went on and more authors got involved, the canvas started getting filled in, and there were dangers of running over each other's toes, duplicating what everybody else was doing. I think there are 2, possibly 3 different versions of how Han Solo got the Millennium Falcon from Lando Calrissian, with slightly different dates on all 3 of them. So at some point, Lucasfilm had to make a call, okay, this is the official one. The problem back then was that we had the publishers and we had the comic book people. We didn't know who was talking to, what each side was doing. It took Lucasfilm a few years to get up to speed on monitoring all of it as well. It also had games and all the other stuff that was coming out as well. Now, since the change from to Legends and official canon, which I think they hate the word, but we're stuck with it, canon. The story group is in place that is overseeing everything. So they, unlike the old days when nobody knew everything that was happening, story group knows everything. They know what the comics are doing, what the movies are going to be doing, what the TV shows, novels, etc. So, for example, with Thrawn, there were a couple of cases where I got a note back, okay, TIE fighters don't exist at the beginning of this book, but they will come into service partway through. So at the beginning, use this kind of starfighter, and then you can add in the TIE fighter later on. So, okay, they help me keep within continuity that way. And they also, the other direction, walk-on character in one of the chapters, they came back, this character's name is very similar to one that's going to be used in another project in the near future. Can you change it so there's no confusion? Yeah, absolutely. Search and replace, easy enough to do. But I wouldn't have known. I don't even know what part of the story, the Star Wars saga, this is coming in. But again, they know everything, so it frees me up to write what I've been authorized to write and not worry about the details, because there are people down the road who will catch that.
Cool. How do you feel seeing Thrawn on Star Wars Rebels? Would you ever want to see him on the big screen in one of the live-action movies?
You're joking, right? Absolutely. No, I was flabbergasted when I got the news that Thrawn was going to be in Rebels. I think they've done a terrific job with him. How many of you have seen Rebels all the way through season 3? How many of you have not seen it and are going to? Okay, so no spoilers, people. But I think they did a great job capturing not only the essence of who Thrawn is, but also the kind of the meta, how he interacts with the politics, the military, his enemies, etc. I'm looking forward to seeing what they're doing with him in season 4, which has been announced as the last season. So I don't know where they're bringing him, but we'll see. But again, though, you also have to remember, people who are nervous about this, remember that these guys, Dave Filoni, the story group, all these people grew up with the old Legends books. They grew up in the 90s with the Thrawn trilogy and all the others. they are going to be careful with it. They love this stuff. They are going to be cautious. They're not going to change anything they don't have to. And Leland Shee, the keeper of the Holocron, the man with the utterly amazing memory for everything Star Wars, said something a few years ago that I've always remembered. This was before the sale, before new movies, etc. He said, everything in Star Wars is somebody's favorite. So the point of that was, we don't want to change something, we don't want to kick something out of existence just because we don't like it. We are only going to do something like that if it's necessary for stories that we want to tell. So for example, they glossed over the whole early days after Return of the Jedi in the crawl for The Force Awakens. On the other hand, Chewbacca's back, so Vector Prime either doesn't exist, or else when they threw that moon at Chewbacca, they missed. Well, it's easy to do. How many of you have ever tried throwing a moon at somebody? Yeah, it's not as easy as it sounds. So they're picking and choosing what gets relegated as, no, this didn't happen. Everything else that they haven't overwritten is kind of still there. It's off in the shadows. They could bring it in anytime they wanted to. So you know, people, be of good cheer. Be calm. I have to say this, give the speech every convention at least once. So you guys are getting it preemptive.
So if you could change anything about the Star Wars canon, even things from the movies, what would you change and why?
I would probably change how Anakin fell to the dark side. All the pieces were ready, but it seemed too quick when it happened. I would have liked to see a little more manipulation by Palpatine, or a little more hesitation, or a little more after he's agreed, you know, questioning, not sure, 2 steps forward, 1 step back type of thing. I think it happened a little too quickly. And it's a pivotal moment in Star Wars, the Star Wars saga, and I would like to have seen that a little bit more played out.
Cool. Thank you. Thrawn was the first appearance of the alien Chiss race, which went on to become popular in the expanded universe. What was it like to see your creation spread through Star Wars lore by other authors?
It was exciting. It can also be frustrating because a friend coined a term out-of-character experience when someone has taken a known character and done strange things with them. You know, some authors do better with characters or races I've created. Others don't do as well. I try to avoid taking other writers' characters for that very reason. I don't want to get them wrong. The popularity of the Chiss has been kind of amazing to me. I don't play the online game because A, I don't have time, and B, I suck at it. But I've been told that the Chiss are very popular in that game as characters for the players to play. So I'm not quite sure what it is. I assume it's the legacy of Thrawn, that if Thrawn is cool, all the Chiss are cool, and let's play a Chiss. But it's always, I mean, when I finish a book, I don't know if it's any good. I don't know if anybody's going to like it. I know it's the best I can do, but I know all the plot twists, all the character arcs, all the story arcs, all the jokes. I can't assess it. I have to wait until readers get it, read it, and then they make a decision. So while I hope characters like Thrawn and the Chiss capture the imagination, there's no way I can know about it. Suddenly we are getting echoes. So it's always very gratifying, but it's always unexpected as well.
Cool. Are there any personal favorite characters you'd like to see return to canon from the EU, such as Mara Jade, Talon Karrde, Gilad Pellaeon, etc.?
Yep, all of them. Let's go ahead and just, address the Pellaeon issue, because a lot of people were unhappy that Pellaeon is not in the new book. Spoilers. The thing about, I think the thing a lot of people liked about Pellaeon in the Thrawn trilogy was his relationship with Thrawn. But the Thrawn in the book Thrawn is not in the same situation. He's not in overall command of pretty much everything Imperial. He is an up-and-coming officer. He's dealing with superior officers, some of whom recognize his potential, others who just don't like him, period. You would not have that dynamic that you have between Thrawn and Pellaeon, even if you brought Pellaeon in here. It didn't seem any point in changing that dynamic just to shoehorn Pellaeon in, which is why I created Eli Vanto, who is our point of view, our Dr. Watson, the reader's point of view into the saga, as different dynamic, one that now he's going to grow and change along with following Thrawn's path. He gets to do it as well, whereas Pellaeon would have been a superior officer at this point. It really wouldn't have worked. But I would like to see Pellaeon come back in at a proper time. Obviously, Mara Jade, people have been nagging about that since about a minute and a half after Thrawn was revealed in the London celebration trailer. I think about the fourth question that came up was about Mara Jade, and Filoni said, yeah, we knew this was coming. Patience. We'll see what they do with that. I think the popularity of Thrawn in Rebels, and hopefully the popularity of the book, will induce people at Lucasfilm to start looking at other characters that are popular among readers. Can we bring these back and make them popular for the general Star Wars fan? Because remember, the readers are a small subset of overall Star Wars fandom. And they need to balance the readers really want Thrawn back in, but everybody else doesn't even know who he is. Can we make him a compelling character again and introduce him to all of these other fans as well? So we'll see what they choose to do. I'm ready anytime they give me a call. Yeah, I can have an outline to them in 3-4 hours. I'm inspired.
What kind of research do you do before you write a book? How long do you spend researching?
I do as little research as possible because I'm lazy. Typically, I do whatever is needed at the time. If I am in a Star Wars book, if I am about to go to some planet, I will pause the writing, look at the Star Wars Atlas, cross-check with Wikipedia, see if these things will work. So I do the research in bits and pieces as I need it. Sometimes I need to do something at the beginning, but most of the research is as I go along. So, and again, as much of it as I can make up and not have to, come into real science, the better.
Cool. So you write a lot of short stories in addition to your novels. Do you prefer writing one more than the other, or how are they different?
It's the difference between a mural and a little cameo. It's short stories have to be very tightly written. There's not a lot of time not much time for character development. You can't do a lot of plotting in it. I'm of the opinion that there are stories that are just every story is naturally its own length. That there are some ideas that are short story ideas, some that are novels, some that are trilogies. Some, Wheel of Time, what's a 10, Dectology, something like that. But when I get an idea, generally at this point in my career, I know how long it's going to be. For example, one of my short stories 15, 20 years ago was called The President's Doll. The idea came to me as 2 words, voodoo acupuncture. Instead of you getting the pin stuck in you, the doll gets the pin stuck in them. Okay, that is not going to support a whole novel's worth, but it was a great short story idea. Whereas something like Thrawn or Sybil's War, the new series coming out starting next month, that's at least a trilogy, maybe 5 books, depending on what Tor wants from that. Thrawn has a couple of hooks for sequels. I'm pitching the ideas to Del Rey at this point. Actually, Del Rey is interested, but the ideas are wending their way through Lucasfilm to make sure I'm not, again, stepping on something that I have no idea is even out there.
Cool. Thank you. One of my favorite things about reading Thrawn as a character is watching him make decisions in warfare that seem counterintuitive, only to see his plan come together in victory, sometimes against insurmountable odds. How do you orchestrate these pieces of strategic warfare?
I'm not sure counterintuitive is the right word. Obscure, maybe a better one. In a lot of ways, it's like writing battles and such with Thrawn. It's like writing a mystery. You start from your end point and work your way back. Or, okay, I know this is going to be, this is the initial setup, and then you start playing chess against yourself. Okay, this is the enemy's move. All right, turn it around, the board around. Okay, here's Thrawn's move, and turn it around for the next one. And a lot of the battles work out that way as I'm writing them. Okay, we need a clever thing here for the bad guys. Let's see, this would work. How is that going to be countered? And they just work their way out. And along the way, I usually come up with the obscure or not quite noticeable facts or details that Thrawn can pick up that other people might not, and then use those in building the scene, the battle, whatever.
Cool. What books have you read recently or are reading right now? The book at home I read paper books at home. I read on the Kindle when I'm on the road because I don't have the pounds to spare for regular books. The book I'm reading at home is, I think the title is just D-Day. It's the story of all the details of the Normandy invasion. What I'm reading on Kindle right now is I'm going through my complete collection of Sherlock Holmes once more, because those are fun. What made you want to write sci-fi, and what drew you into writing for Star Wars?
I always was a sci-fi fan. I always read a lot of science fiction, some fantasy, but science fiction was what I liked best. Working on a doctorate in physics, 1975, November 1975, I watched a bad TV show. I turned it off and I said, I could write better than that. So over the next 2 weeks, in my spare time, I wrote a story which was pretty abysmal, but it showed how much fun it was to write and finish stories and such. It was The Invisible Man with David McCallum, by the way, if anybody wanted to know. You know, I like David McCallum. I liked him in Man from U.N.C.L.E. I like him in NCIS, but you got to give the guy something to work with, even him. So my advisor was out of town a lot. The project was not working. In fact, there was a fatal flaw in it that we didn't know at the time. Started writing in November '75, sold my first story in December of '78. Sold my second story in July of '79, the day I found out my advisor had died of a heart attack the night before, leaving me with, as I said, a project that was never going to work. So I worked with a new professor, a new project for a semester, discovered I couldn't write and do a new project at the same time. I had time, I just didn't have enough mental energy. I was having more fun writing than I was with this new project. They'd also said, by the way, 2 years, 8 to 10 hours a day, 6 days a week, and you can probably get to your doctorate. And I wasn't sure I wanted to invest that much time anymore. So in December of '79, I quit the department, started working full-time in 1980. Started making a living in 1984, for those of you who might be thinking about that. Don't give up your day job, especially a day job as nice as this one. Star Wars was one of those completely out of the blue, platinum platter type of things. In 1988, Lou Aronica, who was head of Bantam Spectra, contacted Lucasfilm suggesting that since George wasn't doing anything more with Star Wars, that Bantam would like to pick up the saga after Return of the Jedi. The letter languished for about a year. About that same time, the Lucasfilm people were considering restarting their adult fiction line and looking around for a publisher. The two came together. Bantam and Lucasfilm made a deal. Bantam's editors were asked to find an author. They made up a short list. Lucasfilm decided they liked my style best. And I had a November of '89 phone call from my agent with the understatement of the decade. Tim, we have a very interesting offer here. So it was just one of the things. The two kickers of that story are, first of all, my editor almost didn't suggest my name at that Bantam meeting, because I had 3 books under contract, and she told me later that she didn't want me getting sidetracked with media stuff. I think that was her terms. The other kicker is I'd been with Bantam Books at that point for a grand total of 6 weeks. We had just left Bain Books because they couldn't afford what my agent was going to ask. And actually, Russ and I had a couple of conversations. He almost took me to Tor Books because one of the editors there really liked me and he thought, we can probably get an extra $5,000 advance per book out of Tor, but I think Bantam is where you really should be right now. Little did he know. So, all the pieces just came together, and the rest, 1991. By the way, nobody knew if those books would sell. Nobody knew if Star Wars fans were even out there anymore. Well, this is 91. The last movie was 83, and the fans were very quiet because there was nothing to glom onto. So of course they were quiet. When Heir to the Empire hit the stands, the first printing was gone in a couple of weeks. They were scrambling to A, print more copies, and B, make more deals with Lucasfilm for more books. They ultimately did 12 more, wound up I think like 15. There was another, Bantam's contract ran out, Del Rey outbid them for the next, and the books have been with Del Rey ever since. But it was, nobody knew if the Star Wars fans were there, and you were, and still are, and Star Wars is bigger, brighter, prettier than ever, like Emerald City.
Cool. Do you hope we'll see more of Eli and the Chiss?
Let's see, the short answer is yes. Long answer is yes, please. Yeah, again, I have 2 sequels pitched. Now, we're going to have a little bit of a problem, possibly. My son pointed out that we have the original Thrawn trilogy. If I do 2 sequels to this book, that's another Thrawn trilogy. His solution is I sell 3 more books and make a Thrawn tetralogy. So I'll have a Thrawn trilogy, Hand of Thrawn duology, the Thrawn tetralogy. I mentioned this to the editor a few conventions ago, and she turned to one of the other Del Rey people and said, "See how smoothly he does that?" So we will see. I've got at least 2 more in mind. We'll see if the market is interested, if Del Rey is interested, if Lucasfilm's interested. There are always more stories to be told in Star Wars. That's the great thing about Star Wars. It's such a big galaxy. There are always more stories to tell. Pick new characters, meld them up with older ones and such. It's a wide open universe. It was always very wide open. A lot of stories to be told, and it will continue to be that way. And in the meantime, we get more movies, we get more TV shows, we get more books, we get more everything. So, and lightsabers are cool. What can I say?
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.